Cool. I think awesome.
We are live, Vic. Are we live?
We are live, yes.
Welcome, everyone. We are live now. Once again, we are bringing you and extending our series of topics, a podcast series. We are one. Once again, we are bringing in a very good speaker today, and that I will leave it to Vic, beautiful host who has been hosting these episodes for the last few topics. And we are really excited today to bring you a topic which is definitely resonates with many humans, and in fact every human, I would say, and that is the most being ourselves is relationships. But before I jump into relationships and before I ask Vic to carry on, this We Are One is a podcast series where we bring topics that matters to humans, that matters to humanity, that matters to all of us. And what more than we should be able to discuss, communicate, and talk about on various levels that we don't get to talk. But talking also and communicating also gives this series a good layer of our well-being, not of just being ourselves or existence of ourselves, but our emotional well-being matters most to everyone. So this is an emotional well-being series with various topics. So I'm not going to delay much, but this is a very interesting and exciting topic for everyone, and particularly for me and everyone that are listening and who are not listening also. Please ensure that this topic is not going to go away from anyone or any human, because we are born with it. Relationships is something that we are born with it, and we can't just detach it. We have to just keep attaching it. So let's give it back to Vic, who is our lovely host today, and who is going to introduce one of the most experts and expertise of relationship that we are bringing in today. So over to you, Vic, to continue this very emotional well-being series.
Thank you for that introduction, Shailesh. I am extremely honoured today to have Cindra with us. Cindra has her own podcast series called Relationship Now, which aims to bring taboo topics into the light. Cindra is a couples coach with a focus on embodiment practices, yoga, dance, movement, being more present in one's body. So today, Cindra is going to talk with us on relationships. And to just dive down deep into those two topics, really, into relationships. I think relationships is, like you say, Cindra, is one of the topics that are really taboo. People don't like to share about their own personal relationships, because it's, the walls go up and the fear of being judged and, being open about your intimate relationships, especially. So I'm really excited today to speak with Cindra to unravel this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be on. And it's funny because relationships are so integral to our human existence. And it's one of the things that's not really talked about or educated about in schooling. And it's one of those things that we're expected to know. We're expected to know how to have a conscious, connected relationship. We're expected to know how to have fulfilling sex. We're expected to know how to navigate conflict. Yet we're not actually, most of us aren't actually given the tools to get there. So yeah, I find that super interesting.
So why is it that, to start with, why are relationships necessary in our well-being?
I think relationships are necessary because we all crave like a human touch. We all need that human touch and that love. So I think at a very primal level, they're necessary to fulfill those kind of components. I think they're one part of our well-being that we do kind of take for granted, and that's where we end up with a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety and a lot of exhaustion and emotional overwhelm, is because we kind of lean on relationships, especially when we're doing all the right things, you know, like and I've had this experience in my own life, you know, like doing my exercise and meditating and going to yoga and journaling and doing all the things for myself, however, not actually really nourishing the relationship with myself, which is the most important one, and then the relationships around you. So I think they're really necessary for soul growth and expansion as well, because, you know, as most listeners would have had some kind of relationship before, you learn things in a relationship that you can't learn on your own. You know, like they bring up your stuff like in a big way. They can trigger you. They can, gosh, like really send you in this other direction. They can allow you to feel a depth of emotions that you might not actually push yourself to go on your own, you know? So I think they're necessary on a primal level, and also for expansion, for growth, for, you know, self-development. Like relationships are like a super highway to personal self-development, if you want to look at them in that way, you know, if you want to open your heart and mind to that expansion.
So
Because I want to ask, you know, there are like people have said to me in the past, you know, like, why can't we have that, you know, self-development and expansion on your own individually? You know, do you think, or is there a block there in them saying that, you know, like they're not wanting to open up to relationships with others, and, you know, they're independent and you want to do it on their own? Is there a fear in relationships there, or is it just you know, a not knowing of how the relationship can benefit from them, for them?
I think both. I think there's definitely a fear, and you tend to see this in people that are fiercely single, like, you know, fierce. I'm single. I'm owning it. I love it. I'm so independent. I don't want that independence to be taken off me. Those people, oh, I just got a chill. So that's definitely on the right track. I believe are maybe in a bit of fear about, what is this relationship going to be bringing up in me? I don't want to go there, actually. And, you know, maybe in this lifetime, that's not their path to go there either, you know. However, when you can lean into that fear and that uncertainty and that unknown, and actually truly open yourself up, not just to love, but to all of the other stuff as well in, like, you know, romantic relationships, that's where the growth is, you know, like stuff that I've learned from my relationships, especially in the past couple of years with my partner now. I definitely wouldn't have gone to that edge on my own. I don't think I would have been able to push myself to that edge on my own.
Yeah.
So I have a question, Cindra. When Beck said that, is it why relationships are necessary? Just to add to that, is relationships are natural being for humans, like emotions are natural for humans? Is relationships is a natural ingredient, or is it like we have to create? What would you say on it?
Oh, I think a bit of both.
Okay.
You know, like you feel that attraction to somebody, and a relationship does kind of sometimes tick over on its own.
Correct.
However, I think there is a component of, you know, seeking and exploring as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I just thought I'll just bring that in. Anyway, go ahead, Beck. You're up to it. We can do the next one. It's interesting because, so for some humans, relationships could be natural, that they create or they attach easily, just like we have that sense of attraction towards material things, or sense of attraction toward lots of nature. And we try to build up relations. Like, you know, sometimes you all of a sudden know a lot about a tree or a plant, and then you don't know anything about animals. So what is it? Like, is it a relationship that we have already born with, or is it a relationship that we have created? That's what my question was, basically related to that. Okay. Now, so coming back to the next question, what?
I think that brings us into the next question, I think, perfectly.
Yeah.
I think,
okay. So yeah.
I think the relationships and connections. I find that, are we having relationships for the fact that it's just a relationship, or are we going into a relationship purely on connection and for growth, or
Sure.
how, I think my question in this is how do they relate, and are they hand in hand, or are they separate?
I think there's a lot of societal conditioning to create the mindset that we need a relationship, and we need to tick that box, and we need to get married, and we need to kind of follow this trajectory. And I'm sure many of your listeners will relate to a time when they were in maybe one of those relationships that they were following the trajectory of what they thought they needed to be doing. Initially, there would have been a spark and an attraction and something that made that connection. However, over time, they find themselves in this marriage and they're not really sure how they got there. So I think sometimes we can get caught up in ticking boxes of society, and then when you're in like a conscious relationship and you're really allowing yourself to follow your own trajectory, and that may not be marriage, and it may not be kids, it could be something else, or it could be that stuff as well. However, you're going into it consciously. I think for me and the people that we coach, like, that's the difference. It's a conscious choice, and the relationship is approached in a way that you're creating your own rules, but perhaps, and I like to say, like a relationship by design. You're creating a relationship by design, and everything is a conversation, a step. It's not just a given. That to me would probably be my perception of the difference of those differences there.
Right. So then in that scenario, sorry, Beck, I want to jump in. Yeah, sorry, please, sorry. It's very stuck my mind that you said we generally create for the society, taking into account for society that we get married, that we have to marry, and then we have to have a relationship. So just on that, so according to you, what's the relationship like? Individual based first and foremost, as you mentioned before, that you have to first develop relation with your inner when you in your own experience as well, you said. So individual relationship needs to be first created or developed or resonated before we go for the society developed relationship or society system based relationship. How would you say that one should have relationship developed or created, individually first or looking into society first?
I always tell people to that they need to put themselves first, and that needs to be their number one relationship. And to be honest, in our coaching, the way that we coach is that the couple will be split up and they work with myself and my partner individually first, because a lot of people skip the self relationship. They skip that bit and they go straight into the relationship with the partner, and that relationship oftentimes becomes a codependent relationship. And within that codependency, they lose themselves. They lose their relationship with themselves. That's not a thing anymore. That's right on the bottom of the priority list. And on top of the priority list is kids, house, job, partner. And then they come last. So often what we do in our work is bringing people back to the start and back to that individual relationship to hone in and repair that, and to allow that to be a priority alongside your romantic relationship or ships. So ideally, in a perfect world, we'd have this beautiful, strong connection with ourselves, and We'd have, self-love and self-awareness, and we'd kind of go out into the world looking for an interdependent relationship that complemented us. However, the movies, books, TV shows don't really give us an example of that. So we tend to do things a bit in reverse of the ideal situation.
Yeah.
So what's coming up for me is we can take this across the board to relationships with family and friends. We're not just speaking into romantic relationships with partners or husbands. I think I'm not a mum, but I have a lot of mum friends and my sisters and stuff, and I think over time you lose the relationship with yourself. And I guess, your kids are, as you said, they're put above you, and that their well-being comes first. But when you lose your own well-being and the relationship with yourself, it's inevitable for the next relationship to suffer. So I think, all of the tips that you're giving us now, we can't forget that they are relatable across the board with, girlfriends and your mates and, and family members.
Absolutely. And bosses, like
Bosses,
and co-workers as well, this relationships, what we can learn in our own relationship with ourselves and in our romantic relationship, dealing with conflict, communication tools, boundaries, all of that stuff we can transfer to every relationship. And one of the beautiful ways that you see this is people that learn to consciously communicate and consciously have conflicts, etc., and then they model this for their kids. And we've seen that in a few couples that we've coached. The kids have seen this change and this shift in their parents, and then the ripple effect then goes down to the kids, into the kids' relationships with their friends, and into their own first relationships out in the world. So if you can get this stuff, start to work on this stuff, the ripple effect would be, imagine if the whole world was having beautiful, conscious conversations and, navigating conflict in a really positive way. The world would just be like a different place.
Because I'm like, you never want to have conflict, but I'm for like positive conflict.
Absolutely.
It's a tool for growth, and I think
huge.
So many of conversations I've had with people, it's like, I just don't want the conflict.
Yeah.
I don't even want to bring the conversation up because I don't want, there to be conflict with my family members and my husband, or with my friends, with my boss. And I think, conflict doesn't have to be negative.
Absolutely.
Conflict it's just a different, point of view for me, and it's definitely an area that we, there's light shone that we can grow within ourselves and within the relationships. So it's one of the things that triggers me when people say, I just don't want the conflict. It's, for me, it's a bit of like, sort of an easy, way out to avoid the room that, you can grow and you can expand.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Conflict is something that I'm personally working on at the moment, because in the past I've been an avoider. I've been one of those people. And I want to lean into it, and I want to be able to grow, and I want to be able to see triggers as lessons, not like as warning signs, like shut down. We have a beautiful friend called James Fish Gill, who's been on our podcast 3 times. And he's a conflict coach, and he talks so beautifully about conflicts and about, I guess, like the main rule, if you do want to start to open up into conflict, is dropping the idea that someone's right and someone's wrong. Like that's like the first thing to start to open, is to drop that idea. And then if you can drop that idea, you can drop the nervous system response to being wrong, and be able to manage your own stress response and seek to understand what the other person's trying to communicate to you in conflict. I mean, again, if we all did that, life's life changing.
Yeah.
But I think that's the two extremes that humans are tend to easily take very easy path, is either one way or that way. They don't want to have the middle ground. They don't want to have the negotiating path, because they think it's not right, and they make believe things that whatever they say is right and whatever others say is wrong. That's the first foremost belief that humans have developed. And this is where comes in the emotional well-being part, that they are themselves the culprit of their own emotions, rather than, blaming it on others. So,
yeah, exactly. It's changing the language of you always and I never and you make me feel. It's like dropping that language and when we can do that somatically, when we can do that somatically, we open our heart. We open our heart and we show that heart to the other person. And again, this can be boss, parent, child relationships. Like, this is universal stuff that no one teaches us, no one shows us. And if we can navigate this in a more open-hearted way, I mean, it doesn't mean that's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be challenging. It doesn't mean you're going to get it right. Like most times you won't get it right. And it's leaning into that. What happens if I drop the fact of I have got to be right all the time? Why do I have to be right all the time? And that opens up a whole new learning.
The question is, who defines the right and wrong? That's a big question that people hasn't really figured it out, and yet they think that they are right and wrong. So
exactly. Exactly. It's all about perception, and perception is projection. Like, well, I experienced this, so that's what it is. That's what happened. And then other person's like, well, no, you said this. And it's like, did I? No, I didn't. And then it becomes it's like, well, you said this, I didn't say this. And what is what's the point of that? We're just spinning our wheels when we could be seeking to understand what's actually going on, underneath that, underneath the layers.
I guess this is where we want to see the more thought process of the person rather than the prima facie statement of the person. Statement can be interpreted in 100 ways, and the way you want convenient to be. You can convert that statement into whatever conveniently you feel. But is that what he meant? That nobody wants to understand. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I think being able to understand someone's pain, or be curious about.
Be curious,
what is it that you're feeling? I'm actually curious to know. And I don't know if you have seen those feelings wheels with the primary emotions on the inside, and then outside this whole kind of wheel of beautiful emotions. You can just Google like emotions or feelings wheel. And I get a lot of my clients to use these in these situations when they're like, I'm feeling bad. It's like, well, that's not really a great description. So like on the feelings wheel, there's a whole list of emotions they can kind of play with on there, just to give the other person a bit more of an insight into what's their pain around the conflict. There's actually kids feelings wheels as well. Which are really, really helpful for kids to try and, like, when they're like, ugh, and they just can't get it out. It's a really good communication tool to be able to point to how you feel. Because again, like, we're not taught that.
And I think half the times, we're masking our emotions and our thoughts with a layer that it's completely opposite. Like, it could be fear, but we're just saying that we're behaving like we're angry.
Yes.
When really there's a fear of not being accepted, or of not being understood. But what we're projecting and what we're telling you is we're just angry at the way that you're speaking to us, or you're not listening to me correctly, or interpreting wrong and just coming out with anger. But really, it's on me that it's like there's a fear of, okay, well, like if I was to word it differently, they might actually see me, or they might actually, like the truth might be there, but I don't want that to happen. So I'll just behave like I'm angry, to avoid it. So I think, those emotion wheels are a great tool. Definitely.
Yeah. And anger's a big one, like that's a generally like a defense response. It's like putting the walls up. And a lot of what I teach women especially is to move through that anger to get to that next layer, because a lot of us women find it hard to open up and to show that we're not this all that thing. I was talking to a client yesterday, and she was having a really big like anger response in the body, and she was just like, oh gosh. And she messaged me, and I was like, just shake, like you just need to like shake your whole body and like move the anger. And she's like, I was shaking and I was like yelling, and my husband was like, what are you doing? And I was just like, I have to just move this stuff, I have to move it. And she like shook all through the house and like jumping around, just like yelling. And then, and she's like, and then I stopped and I was like, I don't even know what I was angry about, actually, now that I've shifted that emotion. And then she was able to have this conversation with her husband that she wouldn't have been able to have prior to the reaction, because she was clear-headed and in her truth. And the truth was actually that was an old trigger that she was reacting to. So I think if we can use all of these beautiful tools that anyone can access, I mean, they're free at any time, we can start to learn more about ourselves as well as learn more about the other person that we're relating with, which is, I don't know, I guess the journey of life, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
We just need to be open to explore the layers of relationships. Like as you say, we aren't given the lessons or the tools as we're growing up. So when we get to an age that we're in a relationship, or like these conflicts come up, these situations come up, we have no idea to where to look. And I think the pressure of life and kids and marriage and financial burdens, it's like the first thing is like, I don't have the time or the space to look at where I need to start. And I think everything, another issue, like another thing that comes up is that people, not everybody wants to do the work. Like go into a relationship and it becomes codependence, and we want somebody to do it for us. We just want to that we're fine, that that you're doing the right things, when really when you overcompensate, there's going to be a point that it's going to have a toll on your well-being and on your physical and emotional, mental well-being, and then there'll be a day that you're just not doing the right things. So I think we need to take responsibility on that relationships being our own, and with the people around us to do the work.
Like we work on our bodies. We we might go to the gym, we might go to yoga, or whatever exercise that we do. We might work on our diet by like investing in healthy foods, and maybe seeking a naturopath or a nutritionist to guide us in that way. We get coaching or like professional development for work, and like we do all this stuff in like all of the other areas. And then the relationship stuff, it's just like, oh, that's really oh, not that. I'll just keep doing my jogging class or whatever, So I think it's shifting, and I think it's something that people still avoid because they just think that's a too hard basket. So all the people listening to your to your show, probably not. They're probably like looking to work on this stuff. So I think it's great, and I think it's really interesting with relationships, because you have to almost approach them, if you want to start kind of being more conscious in your relationships, is to have that beginner's mind. You have to have an absolute beginner's mind. And this stuff that like we teach people and help people with, it's not hard per se. It's not some kind of magical method. However, you got to start with that beginner's mind. You've got to start with the mindset of like, I know nothing about conscious relationships, so I'm going to start at the start, you know, with that beginner's mind, and be willing to make mistakes and to learn constantly. And then, you know, we just keep learning all the time. Every day you face another relationship and there's another lesson there. And, you know, we go on and we can evolve and grow through this process. However, we have to start at the start.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Okay. I have this, just comes to my mind after this, listening to both of you. One was what Beck touched on, the when you develop relation or when you create relationship, it's like codependency or codependency kind of aspect comes into or creeps in, and then you become lazy or you don't want to do it, but you want others to do it for you when you are in relationship or whatever. So what would you say to create a path of healthy relationship? What would your take on it or tips on it? That when you create a relationship with dependency or codependency, does it really necessary, or it can still be individually developed relationship that you need to still take that approach rather than codependency approach? And then the other thing is, does gender creates different layers of relationship? What Beck was saying, when we create layers of relationship, just came to my mind, like kids or adult or teenage or old age or whatever age you are in, and then whatever life path you are in, relationships are kept developing. So does that have a different tips for that relationship can be developed? And gender is not just kids and this, but also when it comes to men and women, does women approach differently when it comes to relationship, or just men has got different approach when it comes to relationship? What would be your tips on it?
So
I know there's a lot of questions.
I wrote
but you
it down.
can, but you can answer one by one.
I wrote it down.
You can answer one by one. That's fine.
I think the main way to move into a more interdependent relationship, interdependent meaning two people, individuals that are together, however they're not dependent on each other, is to, one, have something of your own in that relationship, whether that is a hobby, a sport, a side hustle. Having something of your own that's separate from your partner is maybe like the easiest action to take to start to create that interdependency. And a lot of people give me the excuse of time. There's always time.
Yeah, there's always time. Yeah.
Even if you have 5 kids and a business, you know, there's always time. I think that is great. And then also sitting down and creating some goals for your relationship and goals for yourself. So you can see your partner's goals, personal goals, and help to support them. They can see yours and help you to support you. Absolutely. And you have some goals together. So there is an understanding that, hey, we're working towards something together. And then separately, we're also working towards something together to give you a little bit of separation and to give you your own focus. Because what we see a lot happening is that interdependency happens a lot when you have kids, and then your relationships is kind of like this all-round experience. Like your partner's your counselor, your teacher, your cleaner, your cook, you know, your hobby. And it just becomes very intertwined. So just starting to like gently and mindfully, you know, separate just a little bit. They're great actions. Obviously, there's like a lot of other stuff that comes into this, but that's where I would start if you want to kind of start to create a little bit of interdependency. As far as gender goes, I identify as queer. So I've been married to a woman previously. I'm married to a man now. I would say like it doesn't really matter with gender. I feel women in a relationship together are more likely to become really quickly codependent. And I would say like male-female relationships kind of follow the trajectory of like a movie type scenario.
Mhm.
You know, may take a little bit of time to get into those roles.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like in my experience, gender doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I think just people in general are conditioned to be in codependent relationships because we don't know, we don't know other relationships.
Yeah.
To be honest, like until I got divorced, like 4-5 years ago, I didn't really know any other kind of relationships until I started reading books and listening to podcasts and I guess knowing in my body that this kind of relating wasn't right for me. But unless you go seeking, it's pretty hard to find,
True.
So I think we're just naturally conditioned to be in this way. Yeah.
I agree. Seeking is the most important thing for any relationship, like rather than believing or having your thoughts from others. Yourself is more important. Seeking, yeah.
Always seeking.
Always seeking. That's true. That's true. But like my question in that relate was to like you being now in two different relationships, one with men and one with women. But what would you say, like, does women has got a different kind of approach when it comes to relationship, or they seek differently, or as opposed to men seeking separately for relationships? What's your take on that?
I think it just depends on the person.
It depends on the person.
I think it depends on the person. Yeah. And
so there is no silver bullet or anything like that.
I don't think there could be research out there. I'm not 100% sure. I think a lot of it revolves around how you were brought up, because what you saw as a child, the people around you, the relationships that were modeled for you and to you. I think that probably has a bigger role to play than gender or even sexuality for that matter. I think it really depends on what you've been shown, how you've been raised, and what kind of influence that has had on you, because we tend to play out our parents or caregivers' relationships. That's just what we do because that's what we've been shown. So that's been definitely my experience in a big way, is that has shaped us, and a lot of the times we need to then unshape from that.
Yes.
It's not about learning the practices, it's unlearning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always about unlearning.
Always about other learning. Yeah. Yes, true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think I've wrapped up my questions.
Okay, so just final then, if you have wrapped up, like I wanted to wrap up one last is like, okay, you had mentioned here, what are healthy relationships according to you, that you could advise on that or tell us from your point of view. How do you define healthy relationship to start with, and what is healthy according to you? Because as she said, learning and unlearning, so healthy and unhealthy for me. How would you define that?
Oh my God, there's so much to do. I think we've covered, this is a good summary. I think we've covered a lot of it. I think a healthy relationship is an interdependent relationship, or at least moving towards interdependency.
Yes.
I think a healthy relationship is one that allows you to be truly yourself. To be honest, that would be my personal definition, because until I, was found my partner, I had never actually felt like I could just truly be like the full Cindra, like 100% me in my emotions, in my vulnerability. So that to me is the definition. However, as we spoke about, being able to have conscious conflict or move towards having conscious conflict, I think that's a really healthy relationship. So everyone will define it in a different way. However, I think a relationship that allows you to be you, to be truly, fully you. And then, you know, equally, you want to support someone to be truly, fully themselves. That is a beautifully healthy relationship. And I think, you know, we've talked about it. Like if you want to get a healthy relationship, start to seek, you know, read a book, listen to a podcast. Every time I listen to a podcast about a relationship, my mind is just like, any podcast about conscious relating, I'm always like, oh my God, there's so much to learn. So I think just having that beginner's mind, learning, you know, as Beck said, it's like unlearning a lot of what you've been conditioned or told, and then learning the new, you know, the new way to relate, and then create your relationship by design. I think, and to see your relationship as equal part of the pie as your fitness, as your diet, as your, you know, meditation, to see it on there, you know, in your self-care pie as such, and to start showing up for it every day.
Yeah, no, that's great insights, Cindra. So I can't resist of asking this final question. The way we are in this uncertain world, and for the last few years, with all this uncertainty around us, relationship becomes more and more important, integral part of who we are, as single or double or triple or whatever. But we need people, we need humans, we need those connections, and we need those relationships. So what would be your tip for the listeners who are going through, and like us, who are here to talk about it and make a yarn about it, make a noise about it? So what would be a simple tip for those people who are seeking, and who, what I learned from you is you got to be a seeker to do and seek the relationship. So your message to all the people, what would be the final message in terms of these uncertain times that we are in when it comes to relationship, whatever may be that relationship? I
think stay open, you know, keep your heart open. And especially with what's going on in the world at the moment, there's a lot of fear being thrown around, etc. And you find yourself closing off, which then we take into our relationships. So if you start to go into that, the easiest thing to do is just roll your shoulders back, open your collarbones, and take a deep breath. And already you're in an open position. So open your heart and stay open. And I think compassion for yourself and for those around you is, the biggest thing right now. So stay open, open your heart, and be compassionate.
Yes, that's great. Stay open. I love that, because this is whole wild freedom. Open means freedom, isn't it? Basically. And this is what we are, isn't it, big? Freedom of free spirited. So what Definitely. I take from here, we are all one, but it is the freedom of free spirited. So thank you so much, Cindra, for sharing your personal experience and giving authentic and giving us that insights of at least uncovering some of the layers that everyone must be going through with their lives. And the most important part is the relationship of everyone's life, that you develop or you create or you make a relationship the way you seek, the way you want. So my message, and thank you once again for doing and giving us this beautiful conversation that we are having with you. We would love to have and explore more, but because short of time, I think I'll final words leave it to Vic to end this beautiful topic called relationships.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to express my gratitude for your time today, Cindra. Thank you so much for joining us. I have so many takeaways from our chat today, and I'm sure there'll be another time in the future that we're able to chat again and explore more with you and the work that you do. So if anybody is wanting to reach out and find more with Cindra, we'll chuck all her links in the comments. And if you do have any questions or anything has triggered you today, please feel free to reach out to us, either any of us, and we can point you in the right directions. I'm definitely happy to move you through, I guess, share Cindra's links and everything for you. So yeah, thank you so much. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
Yeah, thanks, Cindra, once again, and thanks, Beck, for closing that. So the final word, we are all one, and relationships can be also one. We all have relationship. The whole world is one. The whole universe is one. So let's support each other in terms of everything and anything that we do, and develop healthy relationships, which is what we call it. We are all one. And so we will come back to you once again, and I'm sure we will love to have Cindra once again back to expand this topics. When you have more questions and more feedbacks that we get, please write to us and we will come back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beck.
Thank you.